Fantastic.
Thanks.
We're here to talk about the Women of Letters. And I just want to talk to you about the actual events. What do you think is the reason of their success, behind their success?
Because we're very, very good looking. And people flock. No, I don't know. It was something that we came up with as this sort of... We thought we'd try it for 6 months in Melbourne as a monthly show.
And we didn't know if we'd be able to get 100 people along.
To the first show. We definitely bribed people to get to the first show. And, you know, I really like going to spoken word events and would do it, but there's just something about this one that the format hasn't changed since the first show. 5 women all reading a letter to a set theme with a little break where people can write postcards and aerograms of their own, and then a Q&A. That's how it worked in March 2010. That's how it still works and how it's travelled all over the world. So there's something in that.
Maybe just because it is so simple.
But also the intimacy. I think we didn't expect people to be as cathartic and raw and brutally honest as they were. That's really surprised us. And I think when you go to something like that, knowing that it's not going to be recorded, I think that might be the hook, is that people come to it thinking, I don't get to catch this up on YouTube later on. I either go and it might not be in the book, the letter might not be in the book, it might just be for that day, and I get to see the person's emotion as they're reading. I mean, I find it quite addictive, the shows. So,
have you ever looked back and gone, if only we had some recording of that, because that was astonishing?
I mean, in some ways, an audience member certainly let us know when they're upset that they missed a particular show and find out that that reader isn't going to share their letter in a later book or online or anything like that. But they are so much more special because you know that some of those letters won't leave that room, and it just feels like such a privilege to be there, to be one of 400 people who ever hear that particular story.
There's something exhilarating about it, I think. And we're just saying that, you know, these are days where people take photos of their food to record it, and to be able to sit in this room of, you know, 200 to 400 people and hear someone saying something, and you think, I've got to be in the moment. I actually have to listen. I can't look at my phone. I can't text. I have to listen because this might be it. There's something quite beautiful about that.
Yeah, I remember Helen Garner did a show. It was the second one that she'd done for us maybe 3 years ago now, and it was, you know, she hadn't put a book out in, what would be 6 years at that time, and hadn't been doing much writing that she was publishing at the time. And, you know, she's been incredibly revealing in all of her stories, really. Like, there's not much that she seems to have held back, but she made it very clear that that letter wouldn't be leaving that room. And so for people to see someone like, you know, a literary icon like Helen Garner just sharing something that she's written just to share with them is incredible.
The only thing that makes it frustrating is that every now and then, either once I was stuck in Iceland because there was a volcano, and once we were touring the show, that always classic Hardy, and then we were touring the show in America and the Melbourne show happened. So we've missed a couple of shows ourselves. And then you go, because we're control freaks and it's our baby, we're like, no, but I want to see it. You know, can't you record it for me? So thankfully, my mother goes to those ones, and I get the best Galia Hardy bloke. So the first woman was fabulous, and she got very emotional partway through, and her letter was about how she had a horse when she... So I find that that's as good as being there. So if anyone misses a show, just call my mum. I can give you her number. That's fine.
Where has it shown? You talk about going all over the world. Where has it been?
The first time we went overseas was to the US.
We did LA, Austin and New York.
Yeah, and then we went to Indonesia later last year and did sort of a mini tour of Indonesia with shows in Jakarta and Yogyakarta and in Ubud for the Ubud Writers Festival. And then this year we did 13 shows across the States, the UK and Ireland in March and April, and then we've just started it again as a monthly event in New York.
And we went to New Zealand.
Yes,
and there was an earthquake.
Oh, so volcanoes.
Oh yeah, I'm a calamitous person.
The organisation side of this must be enormous.
Yeah.
Do you guys do that, or do you farm it off to? Have you got sort of a group now that sort of look after that?
In the last few months, we've started. We've got 2 other co-curators now in Melbourne, who are 2 friends of ours who've been involved from the very start. Lorelei Vashti, who read at the first ever show, and Gabby Button, who's helped out from the first show onwards. And now they've sort of got more creative control and are actually approaching guests for us and locking in talent and, you know, briefing talent and all that sort of stuff.
It's really nice to know that, because we wanted to focus on New York and getting that going as a monthly event, and the Melbourne shows, we know they do kind of run themselves, but you still have to book guests and organise them and brief them, and to have someone do that kind of, I mean, they're making creative decisions as well and liaising with us about new people, but to have someone send out the briefing email or send out the thank you email to everyone, that's been a huge help.
Yeah, and if, you know, there's a rare day that Marieke and I both need to attend to, you know, our lives or our jobs, to have some other people who can be online and actually there to answer any urgent queries that come in.
You're both right. writing and doing other things.
Yeah.
Out of all this.
This is our side project.
I do see that, very cheekily, it's just curated by. I mean, you're getting everyone else to do your work.
Yeah, tell that to our email accounts. We email each other about 40 times a day.
I also noticed it has very much the women letters on it, and yet has blokes in it.
Yes.
When
Well observed.
And are they honouring women for that night? Is that
no, we did originally think about getting the first Men of Letters if it would maybe be a drag event, but I think only Alan Bro agreed to do that, and we thought maybe we need to let that idea go if we wanted to get more than one guest. No, so the first year we started doing one Men of Letters show a year where we invited 10 men to write a letter to the woman who changed my life, so it's still very much centred on women. And in recent years we've started doing People of Letters events as well, where we invite, we call them co-ed events, men and women, where we get them like sort of loved ones or old friends or authors and editors or musical collaborators to write a letter to my other half.
So they come in pairs, they work in pairs,
And your ambassadors of correspondence. Now,
wow, that sounds so grand. Yes, we are.
Where does this lead? Like,
we're going to take over Australia Post. We're going to save them.
But is it because of a reaction to modern life and emails and texts and emoticons and all of that? You've turned to the idea of letter writing, or what was the original reason you went to letter writing? Was it PJ Harvey's song? What was it?
Well, there were a couple of reasons. We thought it would be just a nice format and a nice way to frame a show, and also an interesting thing for writers to approach, rather than telling a humour story or writing an essay and sharing that. It seemed to be quite a nice idea. But yeah, another part of it is sort of bringing back or hopefully preserving the art of letter writing. We always invite audience members to write their own letters at shows, and we have we buy a box of 1,000 postcards once every 2 months or something, give them stamps at the end, and we send them off the next morning. And so it's actually really lovely to think about all those people who are getting a real piece of mail that they wouldn't be expecting,
and that they might have never been to our shows or heard about them or ever go to them, but their granddaughter did, and they get this piece of handwritten mail from their granddaughter, so it's got this really nice ripple effect, I think.
So I was talking to a daughter at home, and she's 14. I realised you've actually never received one, ever, in your life. A letter that were addressed to you and even or sent one. It was...
Change that.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I think it's got kind of, we were thinking about the comparison I've got is when vinyl records, everyone was like, well, they're dead now, I've got Laserdisc and all those sort of things. But though they've made such a resurgence, there was certainly a period where everyone went, well, vinyl's dead, no one's going to buy it anymore, you've got to go to those dusty record shops and go through things, or record crate fairs. People still had record players, and now that sort of made this resurgence, and people are issuing new records on vinyl. Like Nick Cave does stuff on vinyl, and I've got a record player at home and an iPod.
So
that's it. I know.
Amazing.
So retro. But that's that was something that looked like it was dying a death, but then had this resurgence. I think from the romanticism of it as well.
And especially you hear talk about offices going paperless. Maybe paper in itself will be such a novelty in 10 years' time that letters will come back that way.
Yeah.
Just all the stationery.
Are we still going to be doing this in 10 years' time?
We haven't agreed. We'll see how it goes.
Looking back over the 4 or 5 years...
Nearly 5 in March.
Nearly 5? What are the standout letters? When you talk about Helen Garner, are there letters that were read out that you just will never forget that moment?
Yeah. So Angie Hart did our first ever show, and her first letter was very, she's a songwriter, and it was sort of fairly heavily cloaked in metaphor, and it was a really beautiful lyrical piece of writing, but it wasn't too specific. And then she kept coming to events after that, and sort of as an audience member, and then after, I think it was maybe a year and a half, she asked if we could program her again. And she read this incredible letter. She said that she'd gone to so many shows and seen so many women be so honest and open that she felt she had to do the same. And she told this extraordinary story about, as a letter to the best decision that she'd ever made, and about a previous marriage that she had that was, physically and verbally quite abusive. But I just remember, I still remember digging my hands into the chair while she was reading it, and you could have heard a pin drop in this 400-seater ballroom, and her current lovely husband was sort of waiting side of stage ready to catch her if she ran off crying, and I was sort of ready with a box of tissues on the other side. But she was extraordinary. She'd read it to herself in the front of the mirror again and again and again, so she could get through it on the day, but just she spoke with such clarity and strength. That's one of the standouts for me.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I mean, you were so, but there are so many. It's really hard to pick. There's every show you just think, I can't believe I just witnessed that. But in terms of the people have lettered shows, we did one, the Sydney Writers Festival, and David Williamson, the playwright, did one with his wife Kristen. And we say to them, we say to the pairs, you've got 16 minutes. You can do what you want. You can do 8 minutes each. What you can, do
call and response and trade paragraphs, or you can write it together, or you can
plan what you're going to say. But they didn't plan. They just did the 8 minutes. And Kristen got up first, and she was talking about this period of time when David had a stroke, and it was the letter that what she was thinking in the 2 hours at the hospital, whether she didn't know whether he was going to live or die, and all the things that were going through her head as this sort of medicine dripped into his arm to fix him. And sort of saying, I can't believe I made you go on all these stupid adventure holidays and these trekking holidays, and you're a playwright, all you want to do is sit and read a book next to a pool, and maybe this is my fault because I've pushed you into this life. And if she was very emotional, it was amazing. If you survive this, I promise you'll never have to go on any of these things again. And she said, and of course he did survive. He's sitting here on the stage. And now that he's well, he's got this zest for life, and all he wants to do is go on adventure holidays, and all she wants to do is protect him. And it was an incredibly moving letter, and everyone was crying, and she sat down. And then David got up to do his piece, and he was really visibly moved as well, and kind of a bit shaky, and he just held his letter, and he just said, I didn't know what Kristen was going to write, and I can't read my letter. I love you, Kristen.
Sort of just waved it around.
And he just hugged her, and that was the end of the show. And it was kind of, yeah.
And that was so just extraordinary beautiful. As well. Like one of the best playwrights in the country waving these words that he thinks are completely inadequate around and just won't speak them.
He gave us the letter to print, but on the day, just being there and to see, it said so much about their relationship that he couldn't, it was just beautiful, like amazing, really moving. So we feel really honoured to be able to see those things unfold.
I'm sitting here.
Yeah, you can sit up the back with me and cry at all the shows. I'm the big sulker, the two of us. Michaela holds it together on stage, and I'm up the back to sort of.
Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us.
No worries.
Thanks.
It's been lovely.
You did very well.
Thank you.